Hello, I'm the Dark Master. Cicadas. You've probably heard of them before. Indeed, you probably have heard them, for they're quite common throughout the temperate and tropical regions of the world. In fact, I'm pretty sure some of my really old videos probably have them in the background. But what if I told you that once they were not alone, and indeed, back in the Mesozoic, there was another superfamily of large bugs that reached similar sizes and filled similar roles. These were the Palaeontinoidea, often called the giant cicadas or the Mesozoic cicadas, both of which are a bit of a misnomer, but we'll get to that in a bit. These guys are, much like the cichlids, a deeply underappreciated group of obscure extinct arthropods. Hopefully I can teach you about their biology, anatomy, taxonomy, ecology, evolutionary history, and perhaps what may have happened to them. But before any of that, I think it would be best to start by answering the question on your mind. What exactly are the Palaeontinoidea? Alright, so all more derived animals are roughly divided into two groups based on their embryological development. First are the duratostomes, that include such animals as starfish, acorn worms, fish, and the like, and the protostomes, who develop their mouths before their anus, are the other branch and the one relevant for the rest of the video. They are divided into two groups/lineages. These are the Spiralia, noted for their distinct larval stage, and include such animals as mollusks and segmented worms. More relevant are the Ecdysozoa, distinct for the possession of growth by ecdysis, or the shedding of a cuticle. This group is, not counting some basal forms like the Sarcoritida, are divided into two groups: the Scelidophora, which includes such animals as Priapulids, more often given the name penis worm for, well, obvious reasons, as well as their relatives, and the second, more relevant group are the Cryptovermes, which are themselves divided into two groups: the Nematoidea, which includes nematodes, and the Nematomorpha, better known as hairworms or horsehair worms. And the second group, the Panarthropoda, which will be the subject for the rest of this video. These guys are distinguished by the presence of paired legs, a paired ladder-like nervous system along the center of the body, and a segmented body. They are divided into three living groups, discounting the paraphyletic Lobopodia and the mysterious Cicadomorpha. These are the Tardigrada, the super surviving little guys better known as the water bears, the Onychophora, better known as the velvet worms, which are interesting in that they can shoot out mucus and give life birth. And lastly are the arthropoda themselves, distinguished from their relatives by their mineralized exoskeletons and jointed legs, unlike the others. These are a massive group, and I cannot simply discuss them all, but ignoring several basal clades, they are roughly divided into four clades. Most basal are the Arthropoda, which are most famous for the trilobites, for whom I made an entire video series on, so check that out if you'd like to learn more, but are sadly extinct. Next up are the Salicerates, distinguished by the presence of salicerae, mouthparts, they have, and include such animals as spiders, horseshoe crabs, the infamous Eurypterids, and countless others. The last two clades are grouped within the Mandibulata, a taxon named for the presence of mandibles made from a modified set of legs. First are the Myriapoda, which includes millipedes, centipedes, and their more obscure relatives. And lastly are the Pancrustacea. Yes, shockingly enough, insects are highly derived crustaceans. The Pancrustacea are divided into three main groups. First are the basal Oligostraca, that includes sea shrimps, fish lice, tongue worms, and all other sorts of bizarre relatives. Next are the multicrustacea, which includes most of your famous crustaceans like, crabs, lobsters, shrimp, crawfish, and such. But the third group is the most relevant. It is the Allotricheridae, whose name in Latin means different crustaceans, and indeed, despite only being distinguished by genetic factors, they are related and are quite distinct both from other groups and within themselves. They're divided into four clades. First are the Cephalocauridae, a small group of only 12 species of benthic obscure animals that are horseshoe-headed in nature. Next, most basal, are the Brachiopods, which includes such animals as clam shrimp, fairy shrimp, and tadpole shrimp, as well as the extinct Kazakorthra, which may be the subject for a future video. Next up, we find the Remipedea, which are these venomous centipede-like blind guys of around 12 genera. Lastly, we come to the Hexapoda, so named for their distinct three-part body plan and three legs. They are themselves divided into three classes, though their exact relationships are heavily debated. First are the Protura, better known as the coneheads, and the Diplura, also called the two-pronged bristletales. The Collembola, better known as the springtails, and at last we reach the insects in the class Insecta. The insects are again a massive group, so sorry if I have to skim over some that you might like for the sake of time. The first major division is between the Archognatha, better known as the jumping bristletales, a group of 500 species in two families that are distinct for having a mandible that's more in line with the ancestral condition compared to the remaining insects of the Dicondylia, which have two hinges that attach the mandible to the head. This group, outside of some debated basal forms like Strudiella, are themselves divided into two groups. First are the Zygentoma, a group of around 550 species, often called silverfish, and much more diverse are the Pterygoda, noted for being the first insects with wings, a key trait to the success of the group, though some have secondarily lost it. They are divided into three main clades. The Palaeodictarans, a now entirely extinct group of beaked insects notable for being the first major group of herbivorous insects that lasted until the late Permian. The Panephemeroptera, which included mayflies and their stem relatives, and lastly, the Metapterygota, distinguished from the others by the loss of caudal filaments and a sub-imago stage, both of which mayflies have. They are divided into two groups, the Odonatoptera, which includes dragonflies, damselflies, the gigantic griffinflies, and their more obscure basal relatives, and the Neoptera, the new wings, who can flex their wings over their abdomens. These are themselves divided into two groups. First are the Polyneoptera, which includes a huge number of iconic groups like roaches, termites, praying mantises, grasshoppers, earwigs, stoneflies, stick insects, angel insects, web spinners, and so many, many more, as well as their extinct relatives, all of which undergo incomplete metamorphosis. We then see the second clade, the Eumetabola, whose existence is a bit contested, but for now consists of two groups. The Holometabola, which, includes all insects that go through complex metamorphosis, such as bees, beetles, butterflies, true flies, scorpion flies, lacewings, caddisflies, and a lot of others. The second major branch of the Eumetabola, however, are the subject for the rest of this video, the Paraneoptera, also sometimes called the Acercaria. The Paraneoptera are distinguished by having the simplified, complex, compact body plan of the more derived insects, but not going through complete metamorphosis, maintaining the earlier incomplete metamorphosis of more basal clades. They're divided into three groups. First are the entirely extinct order, the Permopspicida, which, despite the name, originated in the Carboniferous and lasted until the Cinnamanian stage of the Cretaceous around 100 million years ago or so, and were kind of like these weird fly-like dudes. Then there are the Cicodia, which are known as the lice, include both parasitic forms and the free-living bark and book lice. The third groups are the Condylogonatha, or as they are often called, the Panhemiptera, and are divided into two orders. First are the Thysanoptera, better known as the thrips, of around 7,200 species, most of which are fine, but some are pests. More relevant are the second order, the Hemiptera, better known as the true bugs or just bugs. Yes, these are the only insects you can actually call bugs without being inaccurate, and are distinguished by a unique arrangement of their mouth parts, which are piercing in nature. Emerging in the Muscovian state of the Middle Pennsylvanian around 307 years ago, they are divided into four groups. First to split off are the Steronorhynchia, that includes around 12,500 species, such as aphids, jumping plant lice, whiteflies, scale insects, and many others. Next to split off are the Heteroptera, the largest group with more than 45,000 species, including stink bugs, shield bugs, toad bugs, seed bugs, flower bugs, leaf-footed bugs, water bugs, plant bugs, assassin bugs, kissing bugs, water striders, wheel bugs, thread-legged bugs, ambush bugs, and many, many, many more. In stark contrast, the third suborder, the Coloranchia, more well known as the moss bugs or beetle bugs, only consist of around 34 species in South America, New Zealand, Australia, New Caledonia, and Lord Howe Island. They are much more common in the Mesozoic and predate the split up of Gondwana. At last, with the fourth suborder, we come to the subject of the rest of the video, the Archeringa. They themselves are divided into two infraorders. First are the Fulgomorpha, which consist of around 12,500 species of plant hoppers. Second, and clearly more relevant, are the Cicadomorpha. They are distinguished from their plant hopper kin by how the nymphs do not secrete themselves a coat of hydrophobic wax of their sister group. It is divided into two subgroups, only one of which is still alive, the Cyclopita, which consists of three superfamilies, the Cercopoidea, also called the spittlebugs, the Membracoidea, also called the tree or leaf hoppers, and the Cicadoidea, aka the cicadas and their closest extinct relatives. But the second subdivision, now entirely extinct, are the Prosholosymphora, that we come to the relevant group, the superfamily Palaeontinoidea. The other four superfamilies sadly have little information on them, so we'll just put them aside. Indeed, as you could tell, while often called Mesozoic cicadas, they're not really all that closely related to them, being a sister group to the clade that includes cicadas. Now that we've done that, let us discuss the anatomy of the group, which we have a little bit to talk about. Alright, so luckily due to being insects, they don't really have any particular terms unique to them, like with trilobites or cyclids. They got a head, which is generally smallish in the clade, a thorax, i.e. the middle part of the body, with legs and wings. In the Triassic and early Jurassic forms, these were much like those of modern cicadas, but those of the later Mesozoic forms had much larger moth-like wings, which has some ecological implications we will discuss later. Also, despite being called giant cicadas, the largest species reached a 5.9-inch wingspan, which, sounds impressive, but is actually smaller than the largest modern cicada, the empress cicada, Megampophonia imperatoria, which has a wingspan of 8 inches. Now that we've discussed the anatomy, let's discuss the diversity to be found within this group of amazing insects. Alright, so the Palaeontinoid Palaeontinoidea are divided into three families. First and most basal, the Dunstanidae, which emerged in the Upper Permian. So technically, despite being called Mesozoic cicadas, they actually predate them. They survived the Great Dying that wiped out 95% of all life, and they contained around 10 genera, best represented by the genus Dunstania, and lasted until the early Jurassic, being found in South Africa, Australia, France, China, and Central Asia. Though this group may be paraphyletic, it's still generally considered valid, and I'll treat it as such for this video. The next family is the little-known Mesozoic, which consists of only two genera from the Late Jurassic of Australia and South Africa. Last and most diverse of the families are the Palaeontinidae, which emerged in the Late Jurassic and contained around 40 genera with around 100 species that lasted until the start of the Late Cretaceous and included such genera as Palaeontinoids, Eocicada, Marigonvolcussus, and Bocussus. So as you can see, they got a decent amount of diversity. Now let us go on to the group's ecology, aka how they lived as actual animals. Alright, so in terms of ecology, they have not been the focus of many such studies, but we do know a little. They possess a long mouth part consisting of a rostrum that indicates that they fed on the fluids of plants, much like modern leafhoppers and cicadas do. While it has been hypothesized that they were ginkgo specialists, they seem to have, however, been more generalistic, as they have been found in fossil deposits without any ginkgos. Going to the wings, I mentioned earlier that in early forms, they were like those of cicadas, indicating that they flew like them. However, later forms developed shapes more like those of butterflies, indicating an increase in speed and maneuverability, sort of akin to how sphinx moths fly. They also seemingly displayed intricate color patterns. Perhaps it was either cryptic colors to better hide among trees, or given how in some species it varied between individuals, it may have served as some sort of secondary role in terms of sexual reproduction, sort of like how certain butterflies have different colors between sexes. So yeah, the ecology is neat. Perhaps, instead of calling them giant cicadas, we should call them moth cicadas. But yeah, given how successful they are, why did they die out while modern cicadas survived? What happened to them? Well, let's try our best to answer that as we close up this video. Alright, so unlike with the cichlids and crabs, these guys, while predating the cicadas, did coexist with them for a very long period of time, without declines in numbers, indicating that the two did not compete for the same niches. Indeed, it seems that the two groups diversified at the same time. However, in the Cretaceous, they started to decline. The reasons for this are disputed. An initial hypothesis was that they were ginkgo specialists and were heavily impacted from the change from a gymnosperm-dominant flora to a angiosperm-dominant one. For the record, gymnosperms are like pines, while angiosperms are like flowering plants. But given that gymnosperms were still quite diverse in the later part of the Cretaceous, and they were extremely generalistic animals, it seems unlikely that such a change would negatively impact them to the point of extinction. No, instead, further research indicates that it was new competition in the form of early birds, feathered arboreal dinosaurs, and early mammals that may have led to their final extinction. Perhaps unlike modern cicadas, who go through cycles of mass emergences that help to throw off predators through sheer numbers, these guys reproduce in a more standard hemipteran manner. And now normally I'd go over the media appearances of this group in a separate section, but sadly outside of some nice paleo art and a Minecraft mod, they really don't have the pleasure of showing up in any sort of media. Indeed, not even speculative evolution people have utilized them. I guess now I don't have to worry about any obnoxious Paleostream fanboys upset that I dare use their publicly posted art for educational purposes and not for money. therefore not being under the obligation to cite them, even though I literally did, in fact, cite them by name in that YouTube video and encouraged people to check them out. Don't worry, though. I realized some people got a little upset. I did end up trying to link them in the comment section on a pinned comment, but for some reason YouTube deleted it. So going forwards, I'll make sure to expressly show off their social media in, following future videos to avoid that. Not that I should have to, because this is a YouTube video, not a scientific paper, and I'm under no obligation to cite things, even though I always do so just out of, the desire for people to read the sort of papers that I use to make my videos. I don't know, I don't really want to get into the whole controversy of, plagiarism on YouTube, even though it's not really a thing in my personal opinion. But anyway, to end this on a more positive note, hopefully I've been able to inform you of this really amazing group of insects I think are often underappreciated and in many cases sometimes misrepresented. No, they weren't particularly giant, nor were they strictly Mesozoic, nor were they even really cicadas in the strictest sense. But still, despite not being any of those things, they're really cool, and hopefully I've informed you about them. Anyway, if you like this video, like it, but if you love to consider subscribing and sharing it around. It really helps. Take care and have a wonderful day.